Did that look natural?
So I'm gonna start my story at about the age of about 10 years old. So I grew up with my parents, with my siblings, but my dad wasn't around too much. He was working a lot. So actually a lot of responsibility was on my mum with us younger ones. And what happened was eventually a lot of stress fell on her shoulders and she got diagnosed with a few mental illnesses, which made it difficult for her to cope. And growing up, I never really found much value from either of my parents. Both of them struggled, I think, and I think I got a lot of the backlash from that. Now I got to about the age of 14, I didn't know how to deal with things or cope with things emotionally, so I turned to drugs. I was doing all sorts, and it got to the point where it became a habit, and I must have been doing it till I was about the age of 15, 16, to the point I needed to fund this so badly, in fact, that I started selling it. Now selling it was drawing in the wrong crowd of people. I started getting surrounded in people that were selling themselves, that were using and taking themselves, and it became an influence for me, and I became an influence on them, and it became a cycle. Now, around the age of 16, 17, my dad walked out, and I was living with my mum and 3 younger siblings at the time. So a lot of that responsibility fell on me to look after them and keep an eye out on them, as my role was essentially a father, even though my responsibility should not have been anything more than an older brother. So I was an angry person, to say the least. I was an angry person. I went out and did a lot of the wrong stuff. And I must have been 18 when I got invited to something called Soul Survivor, which is a Christian music festival. I got invited to this through my grandparents' friends or connections in church, I think. And I was looking for any way out at this point. I had an awareness of Jesus, and I kind of believed that God existed, but I didn't follow him or give my life to him, until that day where a lady approached me at Soul Survivor, and she was like, look, listen, yeah, I've been praying and I feel like God's been saying all these things to me about you. And she started listing stuff going on in my life, like so scarily accurate that I was like, what? Like, I stepped back out of fear, right? I stepped back in fear, had my hand in my back pocket, like, Wagwan, who are you? Like, getting paranoid, getting really paranoid, more than anyone should. And eventually, she convinced me to let her pray for me. And I gave in, I caved. And she placed her hand on my head and she prayed for me. And I will never be able to explain it, but it was like my heart and my mind were just wiped clean. It was like I hadn't done anything wrong in my life. It was like I didn't feel violent anymore. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel the need or want to do any drugs. I describe it as being put from the passenger seat of a car into the driver's seat. It felt like I had to learn to drive it again. I remember going back into college and going back home and not knowing how to be me. But I was so happy and so full of the spirit and so upbeat. People were coming over going, "Hey, are you on sniff? Are you on sniff?" Thinking that I was taking drugs, thinking that I was happy because I was on drugs. Imagine trying to explain to these people that have been living that life all that time that actually it was just the Holy Spirit, or that was just that my life has been changed by God. And ever since then, I've just been pursuing Jesus. And that is the reason I'm in Mani. And that is the reason that I've joined OTC and I'm doing what I'm doing today.